It's Inspector Cliff O'Brien. I'm the inspector in charge of the major crime section for the Calgary Police Service. Suspect wanted in connection with a domestic-related shooting has turned himself in. At 9:30 this morning, Nihad Abdullah Ibrahim, 52 of Calgary, surrendered to officers at District 5. Ibrahim was being sought in connection with the shooting of his 58-year-old common-law wife. The victim was shot several times while on the lawn of her home in the 600 block of Martindale Boulevard Northeast on Monday. Ibrahim is charged with numerous offenses, including attempted murder, aggravated assault, and various weapons offenses. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to help out. I can tell you that he walked into the District 5 office and turned himself in. As far as any other details about that, that's certainly part of our investigation.
What do you have to believe what he was doing over the last 24 to 30 hours?
Well, we're certainly interested in what he's been doing for the last, since the offense, and that will be part of the investigation, and that's something that the investigative team will be very interested in for sure. The weapon has not been located as far as I know right now, so obviously, again, that's something that we're very interested in. That's going to be some investigative details that we'll leave to the investigative team. So.
Police have obviously done a lot of work with this couple in the past. How frustrating is it for investigators that bail conditions were in place and they weren't followed?
You know, I would say that really domestic situations are very complex. And there is no one blanket way to deal with domestic situations. It is a complex societal issue. It's frustrating that this offender didn't abide by the conditions, but I can tell you that it's a community response and that there was a lot of assistance provided and continuing to be provided to the victim right now. He was transported to Westwind's campus.
Has he been questioned by police?
That's ongoing right now. Yeah, he's being interviewed right now.
Can you tell us anything else about the details of the incidents on the 7th and the 12th? Were they also violent in nature? When he reached his conditions the first time, did he break into the home or did she allow him in? Do you have any details about those incidents?
Yeah, you know what? I don't, sorry. I would say that, what I would say about domestic violence, when we ask questions like, was it violent? What I would say about that is it's important to understand that domestic violence and domestic incidents can escalate very quickly, and we just saw that. And it's important that we have people in our society that speak up for those victims. If the victim doesn't come forward, we need other people to step up and call the police, call the resources, let's get some help early so that we're able to intervene before they escalate. It's not just about violence. It starts out in many cases as an argument. It starts out as something that seemingly is not that big of a deal perhaps to the victim. And then just as quickly as what we just saw, we have a very serious escalation. Well, the assistance from the community I'm talking about are community partners like Homefront, and that's specific to domestic violence and the victim. As far as tips from the public, there certainly was some information that came in, and clearly thanks to the media and thanks to citizens out there, the suspect certainly knew we were looking for him. The victim is still recovering, and and she's being well looked after right now. Yeah, I don't want to get into those kinds of details really for her own safety, frankly.
Did this couple have a history with police before the August 7th incident?
What do you mean?
Did you guys know of domestic violence or issues that they were having, I guess, before he was originally charged?
So that will all be part of two things. That will all be part of the criminal investigation into the shooting incident, and will also be part of the review or when we take a look at this file and see if there's things that either the police or community partners could have done or lessons learned. We're looking at this as an opportunity to see if there's things that we can do better. So that will form part of that.
Maybe you could elaborate a little bit on how quickly domestic violence can escalate to
Absolutely. I think, as Cliff said, every case has its own variables, but it can escalate very, very quickly. Often there is some kind of build-up. Usually someone doesn't sort of wake up in the morning and decide that I'm going to go shoot my partner. But that build-up could take place over a number of years. It could take place over usually at least several hours and often several days and weeks. So you know, I think the critical message is, one, it's not okay to be having thoughts about I'm going to hurt or harm my partner. And if you are, as someone in the community, that you need to be coming forward and asking for some help. And there are lots of supports to help people who are in that state. The other piece is that as a person in the community, if you need to listen to your instincts and trust your guts. You may be with someone who historically has been very a good partner, peaceful, but there may be indications that you're seeing that make you concerned. There are places you can go and get information and help. And again, lots of times it's can be as simple as just verifying that this isn't normal, or that type of statement or that type of conversation isn't okay. Often the people who are most intimate in the relationships are the ones who best know, and then as you know, your circles expand, you have less and less information, but all of those circles have elements of information that might be critical to helping engage some of the intervening systems that we have. And we have some excellent intervening systems here in terms of the police service, in terms of child and family services, in terms of the outreach services that many of the shelters and the community agencies that exist in the city can do, and almost all of them are free of charge, and most of them come from a principled place of wanting to help and keep people safe. Absolutely. Well, my first one was just, fear that someone had died or been killed, and then relief when I found out that she hadn't, although she's been seriously injured. And then the next thought was, man, is there something that we could have done? And certainly, you know, wanting to take at the right time as the investigation closes down here, to take an opportunity to go back and see what we can learn from this file, and see if there isn't something that we could have done to improve the response. A lot of times it's about engaging, right? It's about having those conversations and trying to engage people and just asking questions. Are you safe today? How's it going today? And you know, that it might be as simple as seeing an opportunity to do something like that.
What are your thoughts on the fact that he had previously been charged and was breaching conditions at the time? Is there any concern about how the alleged offenders are being dealt with while they're in the justice system?
Yeah, I would echo Cliff's comments in that every case needs to be looked at its own piece. And so in this particular case, the fact that he was breaching and that he, you know, we'd had contact with him before as a collective response, that's troubling. And that's not, I'm not satisfied that someone is now in the hospital and there might have been an opportunity for us to do something, but we won't know that until we go into the case. One thing I would say is that my years of experience working in domestic violence cases, and we have to remember it's all complex, right? We don't know what motivates someone in any particular time to be abusive, to not be abusive. That's a variable that's hard to control, and there's lots of environmental variables that are hard to control, like employment, like mental health, like addictions. All of these things all come together. But what we do know is that none of them predict, like if I have a substance abuse problem, that doesn't mean that I'm going to be abusive with my spouse. It might elevate the likelihood of me being abusive, but it doesn't cause that piece. So every case you need to look for what are the triggers and what are the hooks, and then as a community, and what I think we've become very good at is trying to identify those triggers and then bringing the appropriate community responses to be there and be enforced to try and mitigate what's going on. So not leaving it to one service like the police service, for example, to try and resolve all the domestic violence incidents. They're not counselors, they're not social workers or psychologists, that sort of thing. They're very good at a particular job called policing. There are others that are better at other elements of that job, and the more that we can bring them to the table, the greater impact we'll have.
Is it typical in a case like this for, if he had already breached the conditions, to then release him again? In situations like this, does this normally happen? I think everyone's a little shocked, but why was he out?
Yeah. Again, every case, I think the investigation, and I think as details of all the contents of the case come forward, that will be something that has to be looked at. I can say that many domestic violence offenders are released. I can say also that, and this goes back to that complexity, for many of them, you know, having been arrested is enough to stop the violence that goes on in the home. So there's 15,000 or 16,000 calls that the police respond to every year. You know, only about a third of those calls might reoffend in the next year. And what we've been able to do with Homefront as the collective community response is reduce that down to those who get a sentence, go through counseling and treatment, and complete that less than 7% of them reoffend. What elements of that coordinated response actually change the behavior of that particular individual in a given case, we don't know. It could be that there's a conversation with a probation officer which turns the light on. It could be that the judge sitting there and saying, these are the conditions that you will abide by. Do you agree to that? That commitment to that judge in that courtroom is what is sufficient. For me personally, if a police officer with sirens pulled up onto my front lawn and arrested me, I would never do that behavior again. But that's me. I'm not, you know, that's my complexity. That's not every other case. So I think that's part of, in a long-winded way, we need to take a look at what's involved in this case, take what we can learn from it, and then be diligent about looking for those opportunities in every case that we see going forward.
Inspector Ryan, could you just elaborate a little more on what's involved in the review, just what exactly it will look at and encompass?
Well, what we will do, and frankly, this is something that we do whenever we have a very serious incident like this, and the police, or we believe the police or other groups have been involved previous, we will take a look at all of those interactions that we've had, that either the police have had or our partners have had with the victim or with the offender, and we'll see, is there something else that we could have done better? Is there some other agency that we could have gotten involved? Is there something else we could have done to obviously avoid this? In this particular case, we also have an offender, and we'll see what the offender tells us as well. There may be some lessons learned from what the offender tells us as well.
Can you say at this point whether there were other agencies called involved?
Well, I can tell you for sure Homefront had some contact for sure. As far as what other agencies, I don't have that right now.
Do you have any indication of how he managed to get it done, despite all the conditions? If it was his gun, or if it was registered to him, or where he might have gotten it?
We don't right now, and that absolutely will form part of the investigation, but we don't right now.
You can say whether it was a handgun or a revolver?
We're going to just hold that back right now, and we're still concerned about that weapon, and we'll be looking for it. Thank you.